begin tonight with the fallout following ABC's decision to suspend Jimmy Kimmel's Late Show indefinitely. Good evening, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Vargas. Free speech advocates are sounding the alarm after ABC pulled the plug on Kimmel last night. Tonight, we've still not heard from the man at the center of the storm, Jimmy Kimmel himself, nor has ABC explained its actions. Now, that has not stopped nearly everyone else from weighing in. Former late-night host David Letterman, former President Barack Obama, conservative podcaster Megyn Kelly, they all have come out with opinions. And never one to shy away from sharing his own thoughts. President Trump weighed in, both last night from Windsor Castle and this afternoon aboard Air Force One. He's on his way back from the UK right now, set to land at any moment. He suggested regulators should consider taking the broadcast licenses away from networks which air mostly critical coverage of him.
I read someplace that the networks were 97% against me. I get 97% negative, and yet I won it easily. I won all 7 swing states, popular, I won everything. And if they're 97% against, they give me only bad publicity or press. I mean, they're getting a license. I would think maybe their license should be taken away. It will be up to Brendan Carr. I think Brendan Carr is outstanding. He's a patriot. He loves our country, and he's a tough guy.
Brendan Carr is the chairman of the FCC, and this all started yesterday when he threatened regulatory action against ABC stations and Disney for Kimmel's remarks, warning, quote, "We can do this the easy way or the hard way." NewsNation's parent company, Nexstar, then announced it would cut the Late Show from the ABC stations it owns. Nexstar said it strongly objects to Kimmel's comments and pulled the show at this time in order to let cooler heads prevail. ABC then announced the show would be suspended indefinitely. The Sinclair Broadcast Group, which also owns ABC stations, followed a short time later and called on Kimmel to issue an apology and make a donation to Charlie Kirk's family. The FCC praised those actions today, accusing Kimmel of misleading the American public about the facts surrounding Kirk's assassination. And Brendan Carr is warning more media changes are coming under Trump's presidency. So, did Jimmy Kimmel go too far? That's up to you, the viewer, to decide. Watch. So there's plenty of reaction from both sides, and in Washington, of course, the divide is playing out on Capitol Hill, and that is where we find NewsNation's Joe Khalil now. Joe, I know a lot of lawmakers had a lot to say about this today.
Yeah, they did, Elizabeth. It was one of those days where we had no shortage of people to talk to because everyone seemed to want to say their piece on the record today. As you would imagine, it fell much along party lines, the opinions on the left, on the right. We're going to get to both of them. I want to start with what we've been hearing from conservatives and Republicans, and they basically said that they feel Jimmy Kimmel had this coming. They felt like he intentionally mischaracterized the assassin who allegedly killed Charlie Kirk. They say that it was not just inappropriate, but it was insensitive. And they say that this is sort of the consequence of doing that a private company like Disney has the right to let someone go. Take a listen to some of the interactions we had with Republicans today.
No, look, you got a major TV host who said something completely false and highly derogatory to a family man who had just been murdered. And look, cancel culture is a complicated thing, right? Like, every business has a right to fire someone that they don't want representing their business anymore.
It's not cancel culture. This is a consequence to Jimmy Kimmel's horrific statements regarding Charlie Kirk. Plus, consumers he has terrible ratings, so they made the business decision as well.
On the other side of that argument, Elizabeth, you've got a bunch of Democrats saying this is the very same cancel culture that people on the right have been decrying for years. And what Democrats say is, you talked about the comments that Brendan Carr made, saying, effectively pressuring Disney and other companies, Democrats believe, into doing this. Democrats do not think that Disney made this decision on their values alone. They think it was seriously pressure, and they say that's where the line is crossed, is when government is deciding what comedians can and cannot say. Take a listen here. The consequence aside, did you think Kimmel's comments were appropriate?
That's not the question. The question is, should the government tell Jimmy Kimmel what he can and can't say. The whole First Amendment is written on the premise that that is not the role of the government.
We can't have government officials bullying private companies to take off people and cancel people in speech.
Elizabeth, we may see some action soon because Congressman Ro Khanna right there says that he wants to try to get a subpoena for Brendan Carr to come in and testify. We've also heard that Democrats might, if they actually win the midterms in 2026, gain the House back, launch an investigation into Brendan Carr. So there may be some moving parts here. For Republicans, the chairman of the Oversight Committee, where an investigation would probably take place, James Comer, said today he knows Brendan Carr personally. He says Carr probably wouldn't need a subpoena. He would be happy to come in and testify if they ask him to do it. So again, we may see some movement here soon on this issue in the days and weeks ahead.
Yeah, Carr's been speaking out a lot. I don't think they need a subpoena. He's been appearing on television all over the place. Joe Khalil, thank you so much. Let's get reaction now from our political panel. Joining me right now is Lauren Wright, a NewsNation political contributor and political scientist at Princeton University. And Mick Mulvaney is President Trump's former chief of staff and also a NewsNation political contributor. Great to have both of you here. So, Mick, one of the loudest applause lines from President Trump's inaugural address was when he vowed to immediately stop all government censorship and bring back free speech. One of his first executive orders in office was to restore freedom of speech and end federal censorship. When the chairman of the FCC is threatening to take action against TV stations if they don't remove a comedian who said something wrong and offensive, many are saying that is government censorship. Is it?
Well, the question is it wrong and offensive or is it false? If you go take a look at the law, what the law says is that the FCC doesn't let people broadcast stuff, information about crimes that they know to be false and that can cause public harm. That's the law. That's not censorship. So take all the discussions about whether or not Disney was right to do it, private entities and so forth. That's a different discussion. Whether or not the ratings, no one cares. Whether or not it's 90% negative towards Donald Trump doesn't make any difference. But did it violate the law? Did he say something in that show that was false about a crime that could cause public harm? I think that's the test here that we need to be looking at. But I'm with you, Elizabeth, on this. This is very close, and I think we're having the right discussion about it because I'm not sure how I feel, to be honest with you.
Yeah, the question is specifically about the government weighing in and pressuring. Lauren, here's how Politico put it today. The Constitution does not guarantee Jimmy Kimmel a talk show, but it does guarantee the government won't quash his speech because of what he chooses to say. Do you think they have the right take?
Well, yes, I do. And look, I personally find his comments deeply offensive, and I think they were totally out of touch. I also completely understand why the affiliates don't want to carry him. What I don't understand is why Trump is dunking on this and saying, this guy deserved it, because the best issue, and I'm sure Mick would agree with me on this, for the right now is free speech. And that's part of the reason they won the 2024 election. And so if it's a market-based decision, emphasize that part. I'm talking about political strategy here, not the business. But what he's doing is he's taking away the ability of Republicans to say, we're the party of liberty, we're the party of free speech. And why people loved Charlie Kirk and followed him wasn't even the content of the ideas. It was because he said the ideas out loud.
Free speech by debating openly.
Exactly.
Listen, it's not, I know Joe Khalil just had the lawmakers weighing in. It was predictably partisan, but we are seeing some very leading Republican voices also say, whoa.
Right.
Government should stay out of this. Go ahead and suspend Jimmy Kimmel. Go ahead and cancel his show, ABC or Disney or affiliate owners. But when the government starts talking about, threatening, that's different.
Yeah, and I have not seen, I want to hear what Mick's saying, but I have not seen an FCC commissioner this outspoken, as you said at the beginning of the show. Elizabeth.
Go ahead, Mick.
I think one of the questions is it different if it's over the airwaves? And I think it has to be. If Jimmy Kimmel wants to go in a public square in front of the White House and say whatever he wants to say, that's free speech. And I think everybody says he can do whatever he wants to there. But if he's going to get access to the public airwaves, that's why we have an FCC in the first place. That's why I went the first time I saw it to the law. And maybe the law is unconstitutional, but you have to challenge it. But the law is you can't say inaccurate, wrong things, false things about a crime that might lead to public injury. I think that's what this test is about. So let's not lose sight of the fact that he's over the public airwaves, and the government does have a legitimate interest in looking into what's said there.
Has to be factual, yeah.
Right. And Mick, the lone Democratic member of the FCC, the board under Brendan Carr, said today that the Trump administration is, quote, weaponizing its licensing authority in order to bring broadcasters to heel. She said this was a campaign of censorship and control. But I say the point that I just made to Lauren, there are even some Republicans who are applauding Kimmel's suspension and also saying the FCC should not be threatening consequences here. Yeah. Let's be real. There's a lot of stuff said on a lot of broadcast networks, but mostly on digital and online, that is outrageous and false and inflammatory and harms people.
I mean, look, you have to ask, if the tables were turned, would Fox News be shut down over the Dominion voting things after the election? Was that a false thing about a crime? I don't know. That's why
well, it was provably false. They paid nearly, they $750 million. So
that's my point. I mean, I'm uncomfortable about this, but I don't think it's nearly as cut and dry as everybody wants it to be. I think you had to look at whether or not the FCC law is constitutional, and whether or not, if it is, what Jimmy Kimmel said violates the FCC law. Again, I'm a conservative with a small c. I'm trying to come back to the institutions and so forth. I don't care about Disney. I don't care about the ratings. I don't care about money. That's a private concern. We're here to talk about the public concern and whether or not this is censorship. I don't think that it is, but it's as close as we've been in a long time.
There are Republicans warning Lauren, one day the shoe might be on the other foot, the other party might be in control. Be careful of the precedent you're setting here.
And I am worried about the messaging for Republicans. If I'm stepping into, that shoe, that set of shoes, is they're approaching the midterms. People are upset about the economy. They're upset a little bit about the way immigration enforcement is taking place. The numbers are shifting on that. And again, their very best issue, the best issue they have, is we're allowed to say things out loud in our party, and you're allowed to disagree with us, and we'll hear you out. And I'm studying college students right now. I have a book coming out about free speech on college campuses, but there is a lopsidedness. The liberal students I have are much less willing to hear what they see as offensive opinions than the conservative students. Yeah. And that's a huge advantage Republicans have that maybe they're losing.
You're infringing on my safe space? You're making
they think some opinions are too far.
You're making me uncomfortable?
Exactly.
Guess what? Life is about feeling uncomfortable. All right, Nick, last thought?
I'm gonna have you talk to
Yeah, I'll come talk. I've got 2 college-age kids, so I know how to talk to college kids. Last thought to you, Mick.
I'll be interested to see what happens next. I wish Trump would stop talking about how negative it is. It's 97% against him. Oh, it was terrible ratings. That has nothing to do with this debate. Did Jimmy Kimmel violate the law? And if so, is the law constitutional? That's where I think the focus should be.
All right, Nick Mulvaney, Lauren Wright, great talk with both of you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, we're going to turn now to Pennsylvania, where we got some new details today about that horrific shooting in York County that killed 3 officers and critically wounded 2. Officials identified the gunman as 24-year-old Matthew Routh. He was killed yesterday afternoon. Routh shot at those officers with an AR-15 rifle while they were trying to serve him with an arrest warrant. The suspect's ex-girlfriend had accused him of stalking her. She claimed he was outside her home on Tuesday night, dressed in camouflage, using binoculars to peer inside the home, armed with a rifle. She also suspected him of setting her truck on fire last month. The York County District Attorney says Routh opened fire on 3 officers just as they walked in the front door to try to apprehend him.
There is one motive, though, that is clear for everything, and that is the hateful scourge of domestic violence. That is what brought us here. That is what brought law enforcement here. That is what started all the activity.
Now, police found Routh inside his former girlfriend's home. She'd fled earlier for her own safety. When officers confronted Routh inside the home, he ambushed them with an AR-15 rifle. Routh killed 3 officers just as they walked in the front door. Then he began walking outside down the road out front, firing at the 2 officers outside. Tonight, one of those officers is in critical but stable condition. The other officer also survived. It was one of the deadliest days for law enforcement in the state of Pennsylvania's history. Joining me now is retired FBI Special Agent Ryan Carr. Thank you so much for being here. You know, domestic violence calls are among the most dangerous that officers face. A federal report said they were responsible for the highest number of officer fatalities, more than any other kind of call. Why is this?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Elizabeth. And, you know, training law enforcement officers, one of the things we tell them right from the beginning is two of the most dangerous things that you're going to do in your career is answer domestic calls and make car stops. Because in both situations, you have no idea what you're walking into. And although I don't think that's quite the case here, but it is definitely my thoughts and prayers go out to the families of the officers and to the York County Police Department and all their officers. They're suffering greatly. I know because I've been there.
Yeah, in this case, this man broke into the house of his former girlfriend. Police had been on the lookout for him. Here's what I don't understand. They were looking for him with misdemeanor arrest, citations. This was not a serious crime. Why do you think this escalated so quickly?
Well, you have a combination of behaviors here. You have stalking, you have trespassing, you have loitering, and prowling. They're all serious warning signs. You know, when you stalk and prowl a person, you're deliberately entering someone else's space. You're testing boundaries. You're ignoring clear social and legal limits. Every step that he was taking, from the watching to the following to showing up at the home, increased the risk of violence occurring.
Well, and then on top of that, you say the former girlfriend says he set fire to her truck as it was parked outside her house. And officers found when they went inside the house that he had shot and killed the black Labrador, the pet. So obviously he's a violent person, but they didn't know all that as they were walking through that front door. Do you think, based on your experience, that officers handled this entire call correctly? Obviously, one of them who was involved in the shooting wasn't even armed. Obviously, it was his fellow officers who returned fire, but it doesn't sound like they were ready for the danger that they faced in that moment.
Well, like I said earlier, when you answer a domestic call, you never know what you're going to walk into. The lethality of these things, because you're serving a warrant. And whenever you serve a warrant or there's a search warrant, you're going to confront a person, and that can act as a flashpoint. And he already feels cornered. He already feels desperate. He's sitting and waiting for the girlfriend to come home. And if she comes home before those police officers get there, he's going to kill her.
Yeah.
The police officers just happen to take her place.
What can you tell me about this AR-15 style rifle with a suppressor that he used?
Well, the AR-15, it's going to have one of two rounds, either a .223 or a .556. And the capacity, there really is no capacity. It's more or less the magazines. And it sounds like he had the largest magazine, which probably was about 30 rounds. Then it was automatic. So those police officers, God rest their soul, they never stood a chance.
This township where the shooting took place is in a very beautiful and rural part of Pennsylvania. It's a small township, just 9,000 people live there. It's not just the police department that's going to feel this, that entire community will.
Well, absolutely. It resonates. It has a ripple effect that not just people in York County, but there's police officers all over the world, including myself, that are feeling this. Because it's a rarity when you find 3 of your fallen brothers that go down at one time.
Yeah, a rarity, in even the biggest and busiest city, but extraordinarily tragic in a very small town like this. Ryan Carr, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right, coming up for us, the war on drugs on international waters. The head of the DEA joins me next to discuss recent U.S. attacks on those drug boats allegedly from Venezuela. Is the strategy working? That's next. Plus, as prosecutors near the end of making their case against would-be presidential assassin Ryan Routh, Will he take the stand in his own defense? We're breaking down how that would actually work coming up. Venezuela is displaying a major show of force tonight after the U.S. struck another alleged drug boat from the country earlier this week. President Nicolas Maduro authorized 3 days of exercises in the Caribbean. State TV showed armed drones, jets, tanks, and a naval fleet practicing drills off La Orquilla Island. On Monday, President Trump announced the military blew up another boat from Venezuela. The president said it was filled with narco-terrorists transporting illegal narcotics into the U.S. Venezuela is one of several countries the Trump administration blames for allowing drug cartels to traffic products into the U.S. So is attacking alleged drug boats really the answer to keeping cocaine, fentanyl, and other drugs out of the hands of Americans? Moments ago, I spoke to DEA Administrator Terry Cole about just that. Terry, after striking the alleged drug boats from Venezuela, President Trump posted on Truth Social, "Be warned, if you're transporting drugs that can kill Americans, we are hunting you." Is this strategy actually reducing the flow of drugs into the United States?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me tonight. And I think what you see is Nicolas Maduro is a narco-terrorist. He is sending metric tons of cocaine from Colombia through Venezuela coming to the United States. We will fully support the efforts of the Department of War.
Is the DEA involved in these boat strikes, or is this all a Department of War operation?
Yeah, so as you know, we share intelligence daily with our federal partners and with the Department of War and our intel community as well. So this is an effort that's being conducted by the Department of War.
So why is the strategy right now targeting boats from Venezuela? Why not also from Mexico or Colombia or Panama? As you know, drugs move through Venezuela, where Maduro collects a nice tax on it, but they're coming from other countries. Why not target boats from other countries?
Yeah, I think with the deadly connection of narco-terrorist Nicolas Maduro with Colombia, specifically with the FARC and the ELN, these targets are sending this poison to the United States that is directly killing U.S. citizens. We are going to protect our national security. We are going to fully support the interagency and our federal partners, and we are fully going to support the Department of War.
Did the DEA supply intelligence to the Department of War on these boats, on who was on these boats, what was on these boats?
Yeah, I think every day we supply intelligence to the interagency, to our other federal partners, to our host nation counterparts, specifically the Colombian National Police. They supply tremendous amount of intelligence as well through their work. This relationship that we've had with the Colombian National Police goes back 40 years. And I think that when you look at the chaos that's currently evolving in Venezuela, we see that deadly connection in Colombia. And I think it's directly, causing significant concern to our national security with the amount of cocaine production that we're currently seeing in Colombia as well.
But I ask because President Trump and the administration has said that they know that there were drug dealers, cartel dealers on the boat, that there were drugs on the boat, but they've yet to show any evidence of that. Where did the intelligence come from of who was on the boat and what was on the boat?
Yeah, I would have to refer you to the Department of War, since it was their action under the direction of the president.
In February, President Trump declared 8 drug cartels as terrorist groups, including the Sinaloa cartel. You have said the DEA will not relent until the Sinaloa cartel is dismantled from top to bottom. Those are strong words. Is that a realistic goal?
Yeah, I think the resolve that DEA has, we owe it to the American citizens. We have too many American citizens that are still dying in this country from this poison that's coming not only from Sinaloa, but from the new generation cartel as well. These are narco-terrorists that continue to poison the United States citizens and kill record amounts of Americans. We will not relent. We will continue to hunt them down. We will continue to work with all our federal partners to, number one, protect our national security, ensure the border is secure, but to continue to hold them accountable.
We know that the drug cartels are the fifth biggest employer in Mexico. These cartels are enormously powerful and have infiltrated almost every walk of life in Mexico. Is Mexico doing enough to counteract the cartels? Can it even at this point?
Yeah, I think Mexico could always do more, but I think what you need to look at with the current state of affairs, you have a president of the United States, the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, the House, the Senate, and you have all federal law enforcement united against the cartels to protect our national security and protect our citizens. We cannot afford to lose this war. We must do everything in our power to protect American citizens, especially our most vulnerable, our kids. They are continuing to target our kids.
How big an issue, we talked, these two strikes were on these boats from Venezuela. The boats reportedly had cocaine on board. How big an issue is cocaine coming into this country as opposed to fentanyl, which has really been the scourge that has killed so many and the focus lately of all these efforts?
Yeah, you continue to see record amounts of cocaine being produced out of Colombia. You continue to see record amounts of methamphetamine being produced in Mexico. You continue to see record amounts of fentanyl being produced in Mexico as well, that it's making its way into the United States. What I am concerned about is that deadly connection of terror, meaning China is supplying the precursor chemicals that are going into Mexico, producing this poison that is coming into the United States. This is a war we cannot afford to lose. I keep going back to, we must do everything humanly possible to protect our national security, to secure our borders, and to save our citizens, save our kids from this deadly poison.
Finally, President Trump has long threatened that he is considering sending U.S. military forces into Mexico to target these drug cartels. Is that still on the table? Do you think that could happen?
Well, the President of the United States will ultimately determine that. But from a DEA standpoint, we will support fully the orders of the President of the United States.
All right. Terry Cole, thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining us tonight with the DEA perspective. Really, really important to hear.
Thank you.
All right, coming up for us, new details in the trial of the would-be presidential assassin Ryan Routh, a trained sniper taking the stand, testifying that Routh could have taken out Trump with a single shot. That testimony and much more as the prosecution gets closer to resting its case. In a Florida courtroom today, chilling testimony from a federal agent as the prosecution nears the end of its case in the trial of alleged would-be assassin Ryan Routh. FBI agent Nicholas Schnell, who was also a certified trained sniper, took the stand today. He testified about that rifle discovered at the West Palm Beach golf course last year after the alleged assassination attempt failed against Donald Trump. Schnell testified just how close Routh got to actually firing the shot. He said that the safety on the rifle was in the off position. That meant, he believed, that Routh fully intended to shoot that rifle and was in imminent position to do so. He added that the bullet loaded in the firearm was of sufficient caliber to kill a target with just one shot. Prosecutors say Routh left the rifle behind after Secret Service agents spotted him, confronted him as he was hiding in a sniper's nest, waiting to take that shot at Trump. As for that nest, Schnell said it was a, quote, good hide to conceal a shooter. Routh was ultimately discovered and his plot scuttled, prosecutors say, but they still say he spent weeks and weeks planning it. His motive, they say, is that he didn't like Trump and didn't want the then candidate to be reelected. Prosecutors say they have one final witness who will take the stand tomorrow. Then they will rest their case. Routh, who is defending himself, will then have his turn. His witnesses are expected to take the stand starting Monday morning. For more, let's go now to Jesse Weber, NewsNation's legal contributor and Law and Crime Network host. First of all, they had a series, the prosecution is nearing the end of its case. They had a series of witnesses today testifying about the rifle and about all these homemade explosive devices they found in Ruth's house. We're talking pipe bombs. We're talking rat traps that were rigged to explode. This is weird and unsettling stuff. Normal people don't make homemade bombs in their basement all the time.
And aside from the legal case, if these allegations are true, if he wasn't caught doing this, what could he have been caught doing? That's what's really, really scary about this. And they made it clear, an expert, there would be really no other purpose to have these materials other than to create weapons. And you couple that with the letter, right, that we've talked about that was found with these materials. That
it was in a box.
It was in a box in North Carolina, and basically was that he wanted to assassinate President Trump. This is an attempt to assassinate President Trump, and I'll offer $150,000 who can never complete the job. The name of the game in this case is, what was his intent? What was he doing? Taking up that position, that sniper position. You know what his cross-examination of that witness was? Well, isn't that just a spot that I could be hanging out and not be detected?
Yeah,
that's what you're going with? Then what are you doing there?
Because people normally buy diapers and hang out inside a bush for 10 hours,
And tracking the president's
with
movements.
a gun
Yeah.
and the safety off. I mean, let's keep in mind, this guy looks like a nut as he's defending himself. But we're talking about something that's deadly serious here.
And there's parts of this where I can't say he's trying to make a mockery of this. I think based on what we've seen in the cross-examination, he thinks he's making a point. It's kind of hard to weave what those points are. There's times he's asking witnesses, have you ever seen me get angry? Is there a benign reason I could have purchased these materials? And that's not really working when you couple all of the evidence together.
We do have some indication of how the jury is taking this. There are reports that they are watching the prosecutors very carefully as they question their witnesses. But when Ruth gets up to cross-examine those witnesses, they do not look at Ruth. This is not this is an uncomfortable spectacle we're seeing. The judge has had it cut him off repeatedly today. He doesn't stop talking when the prosecutors say objection. It feels chaotic.
It is.
And it doesn't appear to be playing well with the jury.
Yeah, look, sometimes it's hard to judge what a jury's thinking or what they're taking.
It's always hard.
It is hard, but here, look, this is a situation where, again, in his opening statements, he was talking about Hitler, Homo erectus. And by the way, that letter that I mentioned before, he wanted the full letter to be brought in because his explanation was, despite those sentences, this is an attempt to assassinate President Trump. Well, I never mentioned a golf course. I mean, that's his
defense.
That's your defense. So it's hard to grasp what he's trying to do.
Okay, he begins to present his case, the defense case, on Monday. Again, let's remind our viewers, he's not a lawyer, has no legal training. My first question to you is, does he take the stand himself and testify? And if he does, how does that work?
He's very unpredictable so far. It's hard to know what he'll do. If he does decide to take the stand, what we've seen many times is a narrative format.
So he just gets to
tell
he probably love that. He gets to sit there and talk uninterrupted.
The judge will provide a little bit of guidelines here, a little bit of barriers. He can't go completely on tangents, but he will give his narrative, and then he subjects himself to cross-examination. If I had to take a guess, he'll try to explain what he was doing there, or he will try to say that the gun was not in working order. I think he'll try to say he's never been a violent individual, but they have a plethora of evidence to contradict each one of those points, and I don't know if he really understands what cross-examination will look like and how it's going to play for the jury, like you said, who already maybe is skeptical of him.
There are lawyers on standby that he can consult. Are they advising him that, I mean, because you know that, you're a lawyer.
Yeah.
No defense lawyer recommends that their client get on the stand and testify in their own defense.
Especially if you're representing yourself. He can't have his cake and eat it too. What do I mean by that? The judge said, you have standby counsel. They can't provide substantive legal advice to you. They can help you maybe draft certain motions or tell you what the rules are, but he can't consult them and say, well, this is what I wanted to testify. This is how I want to testify. He painted himself into a corner, and it's going to be his decision and his decision alone if he takes the stand and thinks that if he can convince one juror that there's some sort of doubt about what his motive was, whether it was really to assassinate President Trump or not, that may be what he tries to do.
Is it possible he's trying to come off as so crazy that maybe one juror will just say he's too crazy to really do this?
I don't think so. And if a juror sides that way, that's not really following the law. That's not a legal defense. But, you know, look, it is outrageous, but it doesn't take away what the allegations are. Very serious allegations. We just couple it back to the first witness, one of the first witnesses who testified, that Secret Service agent who was locked in, who had that gun pointed at him and said he had to open fire.
Yeah, frightening scene that he described. All right, Jesse Waters. It's like Jesse Weber, I'm sorry.
It's okay, it's okay.
I'm really like, I have a cold, so I'm a little.
All good.
Yeah.
It's better than Jesse Ventura, remember that?
I know, I did that 3 times, I think.
That's okay.
Okay, thank you.
Good seeing you.
Coming up for us this weekend, it's going to be an incredibly somber and sad event. Charlie Kirk's funeral happens in Arizona, and the security for it is set to be comparable to a Super Bowl event. What is the Secret Service plan to keep tens of thousands set to attend the event in Arizona safe? We're live with the new details on the massive memorial next. This Sunday, security will be at Super Bowl levels when Charlie Kirk is laid to rest. Tens of thousands of mourners are expected to fill an NFL stadium for the conservative activists' memorial service. Tonight, the U.S. Secret Service is already on the ground in Arizona. The Department of Homeland Security is giving the event its highest level of security assessment, reserved for events of top national significance. That's in part due to the extensive guest list. President Trump, Vice President Vance, and several cabinet members are all set to speak at the service. Law enforcement officials tell us it's an all-hands-on-deck event. An event of this magnitude usually takes months to plan, but obviously, in this case, it came together in just days. NewsNation's Alex Capriello joins us now live. Alex, the amount of law enforcement presence, I imagine, is going to be off the charts at this event.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's really at all levels, from local police to county sheriffs till, of course, the federal government. And we know the United States Secret Service is in charge, at least inside of State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. That's, of course, the home to the Arizona Cardinals, with a capacity upwards of 63,000 people. So a monumental task that's ahead of them. That funeral now being designated as a Tier 1 level event. And what that means is it allows the federal government to utilize the maximum amount of resources necessary to protect the peace. At the very minimum, every single person that will be in attendance will have to go through metal detectors and get a pat down in order to be in there. Now, on the outside of the stadium, that's all the Glendale Police Department, along with several other West Valley law enforcement agencies. Glendale PD and I had a very strong conversation earlier today. They told me all about the plans. Really, it is activating as many police officers as possible. They're saying several hundred. Keep in mind the other sheriff's department and other police departments in the area that'll be contributing as well. Also, drones that will be flying in the sky. They're going to keep their eyes out for any sort of suspicious activity. And then Glendale PD also has a very sophisticated real-time crime center. That's what they call it, where there are cameras just about everywhere, and that's going to be monitored at all times to make sure all of their bases are covered. Elizabeth.
Wow, lots of resources involved in this event coming up on Sunday. Alex Capriello reporting live. Thank you so much. Coming up for us, all the online hateful speech and threats of violence surrounding Charlie Kirk's assassination is making at least one thing clear. Social media isn't helping. So is there anything to do about it? And should we do anything about it? Chris Cuomo joins me live to discuss next. As we mentioned at the top of the show, after Jimmy Kimmel's suspension, President Trump is now suggesting that the FCC regulate and pull broadcast licenses for other networks. But what about social media, where most people are and what most people read and watch? Should the government be involved in regulating that? Chris Cuomo joins me now. Chris, this is something Congress has done nothing about for a very long time, regulating social media.
Almost 30 years. And I think the assumptions of why they did it that way no longer exist. And look, this is tricky. I mean, I don't want to be in the business of advocating for government regulation of media doesn't feel good. It feels chilling to me. But also, that's a little disingenuous. Why? Because there is government regulation now. As you and I know, for long-time ABCers ourselves, you got to have a license, and the license has strings. And you hear from the FCC, and you hear from politicians, and people know that the license is relevant. You can like it or not like it, but it was real. And cable doesn't have the same FCC strings, but they have the FTC. And again, neither of us are strangers to hearing from administrations when they don't like it. And your owners, because there's corporate responsibility, they've got to worry about the government and how they feel about them. So it's always been there, but not on social media. And it's time to have the discussion, because nothing has a bigger influence over our society, and nothing has a worse effect on our society. And they have no strings.
Exactly. For all the hue and cry about broadcast media, it's a tiny, shrinking everyday percentage, whereas you know, most people are getting everything they read and watch now online, on social media, and that's where it's all happening. I'm sure you're going to get into it. Great, great to talk to you about that, and have a great show.